We might not notice, but tremendous technology and mind-boggling science constantly surround us in the products we use every day. Behind their practical use lurk hidden histories, dramatic discoveries, and awesome experiments. They are Wicked Inventions. Coming up, golf cars. What is the connection between a World War II bomber and this electrically powered wonder? DNA. How close are we genetically to slugs? The answer might surprise you. Ice cream. What is the link between Alexander the Great, Marco Polo, and the development of modern ice cream? We reveal the surprising science and amazing manufacture behind these wicked inventions. Golf has been played on turfs around the world for centuries, but just how and why were golf cars introduced? Courses were traditionally walked by golfers, along with their clubs and equipment carried by caddies. It wasn't until the early 20th century that we saw an introduction to the golf car.
It was around the early 20th century when a lot of older golfers in the American community who enjoyed playing, when they got a bit older, arthritis setting in, some of them would have pretty much like a rickshaw. But it was actually a little bit later in the 1930s when the idea of actually having an electric cart to pull you about became popular. And what really set that off was the introduction of battery-powered carts.
They began with a 36-volt battery, which was originally designed to power wing flaps on B-17 bombers. Golf courses and country clubs realised the revenue potential for electric cars, and they began to rent them to players who could not afford to buy one. Although the basic design of golf cars hasn't changed much, they now include new technology that makes them more durable and safer.
Now, it was really in the 50s and 60s when golf carts could be produced a little bit more cheaply, with the evolution of things like fiberglass, with plastics becoming more popular.
The growth and design of golf cars meant that golf players could transport themselves and their equipment with ease. Today, the average golf car will make 7 to 8 trips around a full 18-hole course without needing a recharge. This means that the average golf car will travel up to an amazing 6,800 metres before needing a recharge. That's over 4.2 miles.
The golf car has gone off the golf course almost. You do see like celebrities using them. It's become that whole process of access and mobility which people seek. It's a convenient way of kind of transporting yourself over a small kind of area.
As of today, golf cars are seen on golf courses around the world and are now even used in and around hotels, close communities and within business. But just how are they made? Golf cars help move players and equipment between holes that are often quite far apart. WWII have been making luxury golf cars since 2005, supplying them to clubs and courses around the world.
WWII is a Danish company producing luxury golf cars and utility vehicles. The WWII golf car is the first and only luxury golf car available in the market.
The first step sees the golf car start out life as several chassis parts which are made from bent and extruded pieces of metal. A welder takes each part in order and places them onto a jig, which holds the parts completely still whilst allowing the chassis to rotate. This means every weld location is easy to access, which makes sure all the welds are of high quality.
The chassis is made of aluminum, and aluminum has a number of benefits when it comes to golf carts. It's lighter, and it will not corrode when used on a golf course.
The complete chassis is then engraved with the VIN, or the vehicle's identification number. The electrical wiring loom is then fitted. This is the power and communications network of the car, making sure every electrical item gets power and displays the right information. Next, the brake lines are fitted along the chassis, leading from where the master cylinder will eventually sit to all 4 wheel locations. These lines will carry the hydraulic fluid, which will operate the brake discs or drums that stop the car. This is the same braking system that is used in modern road cars today. The flooring for the occupants, brake master cylinder that forces the brake fluid along the lines, and the rear axle are fitted next.
This rear axle assembly holds the motor of the vehicle, an electric motor, the gearbox, and the rear brakes.
Step 2 begins with the rear panels and the front suspension being fitted.
The Guerrilla has quite a unique front suspension compared to other golf carts, as we are using a double wishbone suspension, which is usually only seen in fast sport cars and other special vehicles.
It is important to take great care when bleeding the brake system. This is when the brake lines are filled with a special fluid, which has a very high boiling point and a very low freezing point. Any air bubbles in the lines can interfere with the brakes and cause them to fail.
One of the very special points about the Guerrilla golf car is that we have hydraulic brakes on all 4 wheels, which is quite different compared to other vehicles in the industry.
The special brake fluid is used because the heat from the brakes would boil water and turn it into steam. Since gas would compress inside the brake lines, steam wouldn't stop a golf car. The heavy battery, weighing between 50 and 180 kilograms, is lowered into position using a crane. Seatbelts are then fitted. To start step 3, the roof is lowered onto the vehicle by a crane and secured. Meanwhile, the complex dashboard begins a journey on its own pre-assembly line.
The Guerrilla dashboard is built according to automotive standards with materials that you would recognize from a normal car.
All of the leather trims and dials must be fitted, along with the wires which will connect the electronics to the wiring loom fitted to the car earlier. The completed dashboard can then be mounted into the car's frame and screwed in. Step 4 is where luxury optional extras are fitted, such as a mini refrigerator. This is all powered by the car's battery and will keep several drinks cool all day. Next, the seats are installed. The seat frame is made up from metal bars welded together, with the padding secured on top. Next, the front body panels with built-in headlights are installed. Step 5 is where the brakes are tested by fitting the car's aluminium wheels and driving it onto a rolling road, which measures the size of the car's braking force. The rolling road checks that all 4 wheels are applying equal and sufficient braking force to stop the golf car.
After the completed assembly line, the vehicle will undergo a functional and quality test. The operator will also adjust the lights, do wheel alignment, and do a final test drive.
Finally, step 6 sees the golf car pass through quality control. Each aspect is checked, from the headlights lighting up to the car driving. If it passes, the car is packaged, ready for shipping to golf courses worldwide. The golf car. Truly a wicked invention. DNA is a familiar term, but do we really know what it is or how it works? It is not a man-made invention, but a collection of molecules, a collection that provides the building blocks of life.
DNA stands for deoxyribose nucleic acid. It contains 4 building blocks, CATG, and these are adenosine, cytosine, guanine, and thymine. And those are used to build up a relatively simple structure. It's a helical structure, and it's essential for all life.
DNA exists in all cells, and the reason DNA is so fundamental to all life is because it influences how a cell develops and what role it plays in our and all other living organisms' bodies. Each one of our cells has its own job. Some cells help us detect light and see, other cells carry oxygen around, while other cells help us digest food by secreting enzymes. As our body is so complicated, there are over 200 cell types powering our existence. To get an idea of the scale and numbers involved, there are over 2.5 billion cells making up one of your hands, and these cells are tiny. And as DNA lives inside these microscopic cells, it is even smaller still. To give an idea of its scale, 25,000 strands of DNA could easily fit side by side into the width of a single human hair. The reason it is so important is to think of DNA like the code that tells a computer what to do, or the blueprints a builder follows to create a house. Essentially, it controls our cells. Although all living organisms on our planet, including dinosaurs, have needed DNA, the substance was only discovered relatively recently in 1869, and then not fully understood until its complex double helix structure was finally described in the 1950s.
DNA wasn't well understood. It took a while for us to understand what it was, and a lot of that required the invention of atomic sequencing, also the invention of X-ray crystallography for us to understand what was going on, because DNA was thought to be a very simple molecule. Because it's made up of 4 building blocks, how hard can it be?
So, how does DNA work? Well, let's follow its double helix structure. The letters of the DNA alphabet, called bases, make up the rungs, with special sugars and other atoms making up the handrails. The rungs are very special. They are adenine, thymine, guanine, and cytosine, but are usually referred to by their initials, A, T, C, and G. These fit together like jigsaw pieces in combinations that provide a long row of letters. This is known as a strand of DNA. Each strand is made up of words that are always 3 letters long. These are called codons, and these words make up sentences that the cell understands. These sentences are called genes and instruct the cell to make a special protein that controls everything in the cell. Each cell has 3 billion base pairs or chemical letters. If those letters were typed out, it would take nearly 30 years of typing non-stop. That's enough text to fill 200 phone books. And this DNA is what makes you unique.
As your parents have their own DNA, you also have your own DNA. It's a copy of both your parents' DNA mixed in together, and so your own DNA is actually unique. Even identical twins, when they're born, they have the same DNA, but as they get older, the copying process in their bodies will differ a bit, and so their own DNA will be slightly different, except it will be very, very, very similar.
As you age, cells in your body are continually reproducing, and DNA makes sure that the next cell is identical to the one it is replacing or joining. Some cells constantly divide, like those in your hair and fingernails. Other cells go through several rounds of cell division and stop, including specialized cells, like those in your brain. And finally, some cells stop dividing, but can be induced to divide to repair injury, such as skin and liver cells. To achieve this, your body takes DNA and essentially splits it apart, copies it, and then puts it back together, creating multiple copies in the process. The act of parents mixing and passing down their DNA and your body's ability to copy and reproduce cells means slight genetic variations can occur. Some of these can manifest as potentially deadly genetic diseases such as cancer, but this process can also allow human bodies to fight other threats such as viruses.
Genetic variations keep us healthy as a population. If you have a very small population that is closed, essentially no one else really comes in to it, you have a small village and everyone marries within one another and keeps having children, that population can actually become susceptible to genetic disease.
If all living organisms have the ability for genetic variations to occur, then every living creature on the planet must have widely different DNA. Not quite. For instance, we share approximately 70% of our DNA with slugs, and other animals are even closer relatives of ours.
While we all have our own DNA and it's all unique, it is also very similar. We as humans share 98.3% of our DNA with apes, so we are very similar. We're also very similar to many other animals, but that small 1 and a bit percent makes us very different in terms of how we understand things.
It might be tiny, but that difference has led us to exploit our world fantastically. Where a beaver will build a dam, we will build vast cities. Where nature has not provided us with wings, we have invented a way to fly. And our own DNA has provided us with the ability to exploit the very existence of DNA itself.
DNA's signature, when we've enhanced it and fingerprinted it, can show us who is related to whom, and it can give paternity tests, maternity tests. It can also help to lead with the tracing of ancestry. And it's also led to the ability to determine who was at a crime scene. There is the forensic side of it. And DNA is very useful in disease outbreaks. Once you've understood what the virus is, if you can sequence its genome, you can understand how it works. You can help to understand what it will do and also where it is vulnerable. That can save populations, it can control outbreaks, and effectively make us as humans stronger against the viruses which will try to kill us.
The discovery of DNA is truly a wicked invention. Can we extract DNA from a banana? We're going to need a banana, some salt, liquid soap, a knife, warm water, a syringe, tweezers, a sieve, a beaker, chilled isopropyl of alcohol, and a Ziploc bag. We chop up the banana into small pieces and put it in the bag with some salt and warm water and mash the mixture together. We pour the mixture into the beaker through the sieve and add about 2 teaspoons of the liquid soap. We then gently stir the mixture. We take a syringe and suck up some of the chilled isopropyl alcohol and carefully pour it down the side of the beaker, allowing it to float on the top of the banana mixture, and then wait for 5 minutes. In the alcohol layer, we see a white substance start to form. Using the tweezers, we pull this stringy substance from the beaker, and this is the banana's DNA. Mashing the banana exposes a greater surface area from which to extract the DNA. Pouring the mixture through the strainer allows for the collection of the DNA and other cellular substances. The liquid soap is added to help break down cell membranes to release the DNA. And finally, pouring the cold alcohol down the side of the glass allows the DNA to separate from the other cellular substances, which we can then pick out. Can we extract DNA from a banana? Yes, we can. Wicked challenge smashed. Ice cream is enjoyed as a popular dessert all over the world, but just how did it originate from snow and fruit juice? The origins of ice cream, or cream ice as it was previously called, dates back as far as the 2nd century BC.
As long as people have enjoyed cold refreshment, there's been something similar to ice cream. Alexander the Great was known to enjoy snow flavoured with honey and nuts. Again, we know that Nero also was obsessed. He'd get people to go up into the mountains to get snow, which they'd then flavour with fruit juices.
However, these colder foods and juices are far from what we know as ice cream today.
Now, one of the first kind of Western, real big moves towards what we know as ice cream today, we think it's probably from Marco Polo, who was, when he was travelling in the Far East, brought back a recipe for sherbet, or what we know as sorbet. It was in Paris around the 16th century when a Sicilian who had a cafe there created the first real recipe we know today as ice cream. And it was something which then travelled around the world.
Until 1800, ice cream remained a rare and exotic dessert, enjoyed mostly by the elite. However, insulated ice houses were then invented, which meant that manufacturing ice cream soon became an industry in America. Just under a century later, during World War II, ice cream became an edible morale symbol. Each branch of the military tried to outdo the others in serving ice cream to its troops.
You did start to see ice cream becoming more accessible, especially in London, where you'd have a lot of Italian ice cream sellers selling things called penny licks, which was like a glass jar with a little bit of ice cream in. You'd eat it and then you'd give the jar back. So that was the first disposable approach to eating ice cream.
As more pre-packaged ice cream was sold in supermarkets, traditional ice cream parlours started to disappear. Today, specialty ice cream stores and unique restaurants that feature ice cream dishes have surged in popularity. But just how is ice cream made today? Ben & Jerry's are a world-famous producer of tasty ice cream, founded in Vermont, USA.
So 2 guys were in 7th grade gym class in Merrick, Long Island, New York when they met. Their names were Ben Cohen and Jerry Greenfield. They've been fast friends ever since. They did grow up and wanted to go into business together. They thought about going into a bagel business, but it turns out the machines were a little too expensive, so they defaulted to ice cream instead, which has been to the benefit of the rest of us.
It's likely that we're all familiar with their many flavours and combinations of ice cream, but how exactly do they do it? Of course, the core ingredient of ice cream is, well, cream. It all begins with the cow. Once the cream and milk have been separated, it is shipped to the Ben & Jerry's factory and pumped into huge storage silos that are each able to store 6,000 gallons of creamy goodness. To keep everything fresh, it's stored at a cool temperature of just over 2 degrees Celsius before it is ready to be converted to delicious ice cream. Perhaps the most important part of the whole ice cream making process is making the mix. A very experienced person, known as the mix master, performs all of the mix making procedures at the huge 1,000-gallon mix tank. He first adds the heavy cream, condensed milk, and fair trade liquid cane sugar for that all-important sweetness. He will then also add egg yolks and natural stabilizers that help prevent heat shock in the ice cream and the formation of unwanted ice crystals. In the case of chocolate-flavoured ice cream, the mix master will also add cocoa powder at this point too. These ingredients are all blended together for up to 8 minutes, resulting in either a white, sweet cream mix or a chocolate mix if the cocoa was added.
Once we have that base mix, we send it to the pasteurizer and homogenizer. So we heat up the mixture nice and hot, burn off any bacteria that might be in there. We want to make sure it's safe for people to eat. And then we push, pull, twist, and pound that mixture so we can guarantee a smooth, consistent product at the end of the run. We don't want anything separating out.
Pasteurization is the process of heating the mix in order to kill harmful bacteria. The pasteurizer is made up of a series of very thin stainless steel plates. Hot water flows on one side of the plates, and as the cold cream mix is pumped through on the other side of the plates, heat from the hot water is transferred to the mix, heating it to 80 degrees centigrade. Before the mix has a chance to cool down, it enters the homogenizer. There, the mix is forced under high pressure through a very small opening, so that the fat particles from the cream are so finely divided and emulsified that they do not separate from the rest of the mix. The cooled mix is then pumped over to the tank room, where it's held for 4 to 8 hours to allow the ingredients to intermingle. Patience is the key to making a fine ice cream. Our mix is then ready for the all-important flavouring. After being pumped into the flavour vats, a whole world of flavours can be added to the mix. From pure peppermint to fruit extracts, they all go in here.
After we've flavored the ice cream, we'll put it through its first freezing process. It enters those freezers at 36 degrees Fahrenheit, which is a refrigerated temperature, so it's still like a melty milkshake consistency at that point. We freeze it down to 22 degrees Fahrenheit, which makes it soft serve consistency. And here in Vermont, we call that a creamy.
If the ice cream is going to have chunks such as chocolate or toffee added, it takes a turn in the chunk feeder, which will add the tasty chunks and make sure they are evenly dispersed throughout. From here, the ice cream can be packaged up.
Max capacity for the 6-wide filler here in Waterbury, we can do about 300 pints per minute. So it's a lot of ice cream. Now that speed is variable, so depending on the flavor we're making, we can adjust it accordingly, which is pretty awesome.
Our delicious ice cream is almost complete, but before it can be packaged and shipped, it is frozen to an even colder temperature so that it is frozen solid. This process is called hardening, and it all happens in this spiral hardener. You can see where the name came from. Once the ice cream has received the all-important thumbs up, it's ready to be sent across the globe to be enjoyed and devoured in homes, restaurants and cinemas everywhere. Ice cream, a deliciously wicked invention. So, there you have it, a dash through the hidden history, super science and amazing manufacture of products that you use every day but have never realised their amazing backgrounds. Golf cars, DNA, and ice cream. All wicked inventions.